And so I couldn't help but wonder, does Carrie Bradshaw not know about 9/11?
Dude, what?
Sex and the City, originally airing from 1998 to 2004, is very of the time and very about the time. The show is firmly rooted in the late 90s and early 2000s. From its very chic answering machine calls and absolutely cuntiliciously snapping flip phones to some utterly outrageous fashion choices, the show was both shaped by the era and the generation it depicted and had an immense influence on them. SATC, as well as both its eponymous movies and its successor show and Just Like That, is absolutely fascinating because it presents a spectacle I can only describe as reality-first escapism. When my mother was watching the show as it was first airing in the early 2000s in Russia, she couldn't dare to dream about Carrie's rent-controlled NYC apartment or a collection of Manolo Blahniks. After all, she had little me to deal with, so that in 20 years' time, she would have somebody to discuss Big's crimes against humanity with. I'm sorry, this is so fucking hot. I'm taking it off. But still, even a culture and a notion away, after she'd put me to bed, she would rush to the TV because Sex and the City resonated with her. Maybe because some of the episodes were based on real-life events, or maybe because it was a show about relationships, love, loss, friendship, motherhood, navigating life and career as a woman in a big city.
In view of current circumstances, I couldn't help but wonder, are men just women with balls?
I call the show's brand of escapism reality first because it deals honestly and openly with the aspects of life we face generation after generation, bum-ass boyfriend after bum-ass boyfriend. But there's more. Sex and the City's rootedness in contemporary culture and events holds you back from falling over the edge of Manhattan daydreams.
The country runs better with a good-looking man in the White House. I mean, look what happened with Nixon. No one wanted to fuck him, so he fucked everyone.
The show rarely makes such direct references to anything too serious or too political, but just like with a good outfit, it's all in the details.
Samantha had the kind of deluded self-confidence that caused men like Ross Perot to run for president, and it usually got her what she wanted.
On March 27th, 1998, the FDA approved Viagra, and a little over a year later, July 25th, 1999, an episode entitled The Man, the Myth, the Viagra premiered. In The Turtle in the Hair, also known as Vibrator Gate, Charlotte's new addiction, codename Rabbit, is a real sex toy released by Vibratex in 1984. In Running with Scissors, Samantha gets rejected by Tom because she's never been tested for HIV, and she later admits to being terrified of the potential result due to her very active sex life. An anxiety at the forefront of a mind of a true New Yorker who's lived through the 1980s. And then Karen Miranda revealed that they've been tested multiple times. Sex and the City is not as New Yorkian as it is Manhattan-centric? Scrap that. Sex and the City is not as much about New Yorkers as it is about Manhattanites. So it was only fair for me to expect the show to address the biggest tragedy in the recent history of the island. After all, the main characters barely leave Manhattan, essentially treating it as a city of its own. When Miranda moves to Brooklyn, for example, she's afraid her friendships are doomed, because Brooklyn might as well be somewhere deep in the forests of Siberia. So imagine my surprise when 2001 season 4 came and went. And so did all the others, without as much as a passing reference to the events that are forever committed to the memory of every New Yorker who was there to witness them. The events of September 11, 2001 have largely shaped the world we live in. The effects on the everyday life of both an average American and an average un-American citizen can be felt to this day. From the girl so confusing airport/TSA checks to the Patriot Act and the news ticker. And nowhere is it clearer than Manhattan. As Jada Yuan wrote for Washington Post on the 20th anniversary of the attack, that feeling of isolation still lingers for those of us who were in the city that day, who saw the smoke and flames, who frantically called our people who worked there, who daily walked past blocks and blocks of posters of the missing, who read them all, hoping someone would be found. These feelings are largely absent from the second half of season 4, which came back after a mid-season break in January 2002. Just Say Yes, the episode before said break, aired August 12th, 2001. Yet the show seemingly went on as if nothing happened. It was impossible for me to believe that women who made such a fuss about having to go to Staten Island would never reference the evacuation of Manhattan or didn't know anyone who died on that fateful day. It was even more impossible for me to stop thinking. Was 2001 when reality first escapism became escapism first reality? Could you really take the city out of Sex and the City? One could, of course, assume that the show just abandoned the idea of inhabiting the same reality as the viewers due to the reality being too traumatizing. This theory, however, alluring as it may be, shatters loudly after just one sentence.
And just like that, I got COVID.
The Sex and the City universe seems to still, however clumsily, keep its finger on the pulse of pop culture and respond to every beat of that pulse. Except for this one. Following the attack, 63% of American adults admitted to not being able to look away from the TV screen, despite also reporting that the coverage made them frightened and sad. All the major networks aired the news around the clock, completely ad-free for 4 days straight. But one cannot simply watch tragedy unfold without seeking an escape. And so comfort shows, which had very little to do with the new grim reality, were in high demand.
And I kept thinking when they found me, I would forever be the dead girl who watched bad TV.
While some fictional shows dealt with the newly formed anxieties around security, mortality, and, in some cases, a strong lust for revenge, others assumed a willfully ignorant stance. The creators of Friends, for one, decided that the sitcom would remain comfort food for the audience who needed a distraction. Season 4 premiere was dedicated to the people of New York, and further episodes contained the slightest of nods to the events. Yet, that was about it. Sex and the City, however, did not have the luxury of pretending that nothing had happened. After all, its very intro contained multiple shots of the Twin Towers, and they were also seen in the backgrounds of many scenes because the show was filmed in Manhattan. Where Friends' Central Perk is a set in LA, SATC's Manhattan is, well, Manhattan. All natural, baby. New York, as Kim Cattrall described it, was the fifth girl of the show. And dumping your friends when they're going through a tough time goes against girl code, as we all know. Well, maybe Carrie doesn't. In the wake of the tragedy, the showrunners decided to remove the towers from both the intro and the footage they've already shot. In episode 13, when Samantha and Richard dance on the rooftop, we see a completely new New York skyline. And the season finale, despite having been written and shot before the tragedy, was a very fitting tribute to the city. Carrie gives Big a New York send-off, and the end credits read, "Dedicated to our city of New York. Then, now, and forever." So, Darren Star ultimately decided that the show would not be addressing the events of September 11, 2001, and instead opted for a comfort show approach. Case closed. But what if I told you it actually wasn't? I couldn't wrap my head around a show about Manhattan girls not even mentioning anything related to the tragedy, until a little something slid into my head the way Big was sliding into 20-year-old's DMs at his grown age of 95 or some shit. The SATC universe seems to be in the exact same fucked up timeline that we're in. The Twin Towers are nowhere to be seen, the skyline has forever been changed. Big and Carrie's apartment in the movie sequel is located 12 stories lower than their previous penthouse residence, likely due to the 2008 financial crisis. The same movie shows us that airport checks are still very much a thing, even for glamorous Manhattanites who fly business, which makes me sure the September 11 attacks did happen in universe. Or were they flying first class? I wouldn't know. My monthly grocery budget comes out to about 5 or 6 cocktails at a Manhattan bar, and I spent all of it on this fuck-ass fisheye lens. I also cannot imagine that Carrie never talked shit about 50 Shades of Grey in her column, or that Rock and Lily never went through an ironic Twilight phase. And, you know, in a world where Gerard Way didn't start MCR after witnessing the tragedy, these pieces of media would never have existed. So I couldn't help but wonder, I promise this is the last time I'm saying this, I couldn't help but wonder, how could the fabric of the universe tear in such a specific spot? And after ruminating on the question for a while, I'm ready to present my theory. A 2000s TV theory. Carrie Bradshaw does not know about the September 11 attacks, and everyone is afraid to tell her because, well, how do you very nonchalantly bring that up after all this time? That's the thing about Carrie. Being the show's and the movie's narrator, it's her who shapes our perception of the SATC reality. Carrie is not an unreliable narrator per se, but by God, is she a delusional one. When my best friend, also known as the owner of this absolutely fabulous jacket, and I were watching the show, we realized that viewing it through the lens of Carrie's delusions made the most sense. She's not the most perceptive or observant, often getting lost in the debris of the fuck-ass man drama, as is evident from her chronic case of Big is moving to Paris-itis. It seems impossible that not a single main character was not impacted by the events. From the so-called pile, which took weeks to clean up, to the layer of dust, which reached 4 inches in some places, to personal acquaintances in the finance world. Not even to mention the evacuation of Manhattan. According to the timeline put together by fans, the main quartet would have been in LA early September, which can account for Carrie being ignorant of the events, being too consumed by her brand new relationship with Carrie Fisher's assistant Keith. Over the course of Carrie's relationship with Bill Kelly, we learn that she is uninterested in both politics and non-fashion or big and Cosmo-related events.
Are you saying you've never voted in New York City?
You are correct, Mr. President. Since most of my time with him was spent on the campaign trail, I decided to dress the part. I found some vintage Halston and did a spin on Jackie Kennedy, the early years.
And even though we see her read the press in other episodes, I cannot recall a single instance of Carrie actually keeping up with their news. Miranda and Samantha, simply by virtue of their occupations, have to always be up to date, and a case could be made for Charlotte's old money life being intertwined with the Manhattan financial elite. Which makes me think, the rest of the girls know, but they're not telling her. Maybe initially they didn't want to worry her after the big breakup, and then, well, it was too late to inform her in a way that is normal. But what about Carrie's one big issue? After all, it was him who conveniently suggested they move 12 floors down after the 2008 financial crisis. So, you know, wouldn't public enemy number one have to inform the doormat of his life about the tragedy? Not if his business or personal life didn't suffer, which they didn't, because Big is in the mob. He does finance for the mob. Argue with the wall. Just like Carrie never learns how great therapy can be, we never learn what it is that Big does. And that's the thing about Big. He's outstanding not only in his ability to be the human equivalent of long COVID, but also in his unique secrecy. He suddenly uproots his entire life and leaves New York multiple times with no warning. He speaks about his job in the vaguest of terms, and he definitely does not deserve a third thing on this list of suspicious activity. The truth is, even if we put the mafia of it all aside, Big just simply doesn't see Carrie as an equal, a grown adult in her own right. Her job? Silly. Her outfits? Even sillier. Her poorly aged nickname? Kid. And why would you discuss real, serious stuff with a kid?
I started reading your column after we met.
You did?
Yeah. Cute.
And so there it was. My theory laid bare in front of me. The way Carrie's feelings, time after time, were laid bare in front of a no-good, ungrateful, old, rotting, compost trash bin of a man that is John James Preston. Okay, deep breath. And there it was. My theory laid bare in front of me. Carrie's delusions weren't just big. They were grand. It wasn't love that passed her by. It was New York. It was, in fact, an escapism-first reality confined to the fascinating mind of our narrator Carrie Bradshaw that shaped the Manhattan we saw on screen. In chasing after her big love, she completely neglected her true love.
If Lewis was right, and you only get one great love, New York may just be mine.
In later episodes of the show, as well as AGOT, we see that the SATC timeline aligns with ours. Combined with the fact that the September 11 attacks did wipe the Twin Towers from the Sex and the City skyline, there's only one explanation. Carrie doesn't know. And there I was, wondering if, after all this time, the girl should have told her.